Hey everyone, welcome back for the third episode of our newly named podcast. Blake can add it for us later. And we have Cory Froc. And I'll let Rob introduce him because you know him a heck of a lot better than I do. I just know that he has a really hot wife.
What a way to be introduced to the show, hey,
yeah,
Cory?
she's gonna love that. She is gonna love that.
Yeah, I'll leave the name dropping for you. But Cory, thanks for taking the time. Welcome to the show today. As all of our viewers know, this is actually episode 3. Second episode with a guest, so we're really happy to have you here today. To get started, basically, just to let our viewers know, our listeners know, this is on YouTube, Spotify, across all the platforms that you can think of that you can listen to. Cory, why don't you tell the listeners, the viewers, a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, for sure. So from a real estate standpoint, I've been investing for quite a while. I'm a little bit older than a lot of the investors I deal with out there. So I actually started my investing career back in 2006.
Why so late?
Yeah, you know what? You know what actually happened was I had got divorced just shortly before that. And by the time, and I'm not complaining about these bills because they're legitimate bills, but by the time you get through with like the child support and the spousal, all that kind of stuff, I realized very quickly I was doing really well in the corporate world, but at the end of the day, every penny I was making was being spent. Like I literally was putting nothing away for the future. And so I kind of dove into how could I make some more money for the future. And it was a side hustle. I didn't expect to make more money immediately. I had a good corporate job. I was really happy with the corporate job. I just wanted something to build up my wealth. And so I got into it in 2006 and kind of started off gangbusters, which was probably a bad thing. Like I bought, I think it was 12 properties in the first maybe 18 months. And what happened was very similar to just recent times, right? Like I'd compare it to 2021, where 2006 was the peak of the market, and shortly thereafter the market corrected and we had the financial crisis, and I got caught really hard.
We got caught too. I listed a property the day Lehman Brothers collapsed, but that was 09, I think.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, September 09. We listed a property, flip property for sale, Ian Zabo and I, and that was the only flip property we never made money on.
Yeah, I was able to, like I started mine in 2006 into 2007. I might have even bought one in 2008. And I was kind of riding it out. I didn't really know like what I was doing. Like back then there was no podcasts, there was no meetups that I knew of. I was literally going to Chapters, buying books from the US on how to...
You didn't buy Don's books?
Don Campbell was the one that got me into it.
Yeah.
And I bought Don Campbell's Real Estate Investing in Canada, joined the RAIN group, and that kind of helped me through it. But it was almost a little bit too little too late. Like I'd already bought so many properties. Then when the market crashed, I was underwater. Like back at those days, of course, you had mortgage programs and financiers that were letting you buy with 5-10% down. Some of them even had like zero 40-year AMs. So I was doing that. I was taking advantage of all that. Then when the market shifted, I had, I don't know what it would be exactly, but let's say a $3 million portfolio with $3 million in debt with about, a $2.5 or $2 million portfolio under my belt. So.
But back then, like even back, so say September 09, but by March of 2010, like the Canadian market was fine, right?
Yeah.
There was just that 6-month period where people were like, what the hell just happened?
Yeah.
And like the US credit market just went to shit.
Yeah.
But everybody woke up in Canada basically in March and said, holy shit, I still have a job. Banks are still lending everybody, and away we go. But yeah, I know people who bought like December, January of that year, and by March they'd made $250,000 on their property because it was just like that. So for everyone listening on the podcast, that was me with a roller coaster ride down, and then it basically came straight back up on the other side, right?
Like Behemoth at Canada's Wonderland, right?
Yeah.
Like that one.
Sure.
Okay.
And you know what? If I would have had the resources to ride it out, I think I would have been in a much better position. I ended up keeping a few properties, which I actually still own to this day, and they're obviously paid for. Like I got no money in anymore, and they've done extremely well. But at one point, I had to liquidate to keep my head above water. So that was the tough part. I had some joint venture partners that got their money back out. I didn't get my money back out. I ended up losing a lot of money. My credit lines were completely full all across. And yeah, so I sold I think 9 or 10 of the properties to keep the 2 that I had in London going. And but I still have those now today. And so it was a long recovery from there. I took it a lot slower going forward because you got to be able to be prepared for those bumps and curves and everything. But you start buying 1 or 2 properties every couple of years. And then over the last few years, I kind of ramped it up a little bit. But I was also in a much better position, able to withstand any dips or curves or rate adjustments like what's happened. So yeah, I've just been buying primarily bungalows and converting them to duplexes and triplexes, and then just recently over the past couple of years got into some larger developments.
Well, okay, so obviously you went through the crash in 08, 09. What would you say the difference between then and now? What would Yeah,
absolutely. First off, I don't think I was as well informed at that time. There was, we did have internet, but the communication wasn't as great. So it was if you guys think this change in the market has been doom and gloom, you should have been back then. Like you said, Lehman's went under, banks were going under.
Yeah, everything was getting nationalized.
Yeah.
The credit markets in the U.S. basically froze.
Yeah.
You couldn't get a mortgage on anything.
Yeah, it was. I didn't know what was going to happen. I literally was holding on to properties in total fear of what was going to happen. This seems a lot more contrived, right? It's a reaction to an overreaction from the pandemic, and we're going to get through this. They have to increase the Bank of Canada rate in order to kind of curb that inflation. I don't know how much more they can use the Bank of Canada rate, because a lot of the things that are dictating inflation are sort of global fuel and food and all that kind of stuff, right?
Well, they'll go as high as they need to, I think.
Yeah.
If we're talking about what I think is going to happen, I think we're going to get another quarter point rise in March, and then nothing for the rest of the year. Maybe if it kind of spikes again in the summer, then it's going to, we're going to see another quarter point in the fall. But I doubt that. I don't think it's going to fall back down this year either. A lot of people are calling end of year maybe a quarter point decrease. I don't really see that. I think that's 2024 timing. And that's just my best guess. But you can go watch some of my other YouTube videos I made on that. We don't really need to talk. If you want to talk economics, I can talk economics all day. I love that shit.
We could chat economics all day.
Yeah.
I have to agree with you there, Mark. It's the same thing that we're seeing. A quarter point, I can fully expect one to happen in March, and then in the April announcement, again, they're getting closer to curbing that inflation of what they say they are. But in all reality, I could see this happening for the next 24 months. At a stabilized period, right? I don't see any decrease myself, but who's got that crystal ball? I don't have that crystal ball.
Well, RBC is betting on that we're going to see a soft landing.
Yeah.
They see that we're going to see a minor recession in Ontario, which just makes a minor recession across Canada because, no offense, it's more than half the economic output of the country. And therefore it's going to cause everything else to go down. But other than that, if that happens, that's really the best case scenario is a small contraction. I did a video back early February about just that thing is so the Oxford Economics basically said for us to get this major housing crash for down 50% from where we are right now, which is down 35% from the peak, which was obviously stupid last year when we had a 30% rise in 3 months. But they said we would have to be negative growth of almost 10%.
Yeah.
Right? And who really sees that right now?
Yeah, I do not. And the good thing is, from my standpoint, from an investment standpoint, the market has corrected to the point where you can find really good deals in the marketplace right now that can ride out this situation. So, if you're looking at my specific strategy of buying a bungalow or a duplex and creating a triplex or whatever, at today's prices, what's on the market, you can find those properties, convert them into duplexes or triplexes, ride them out. You can have the interest rate go up another point or two and still be cash flow neutral or cash flow positive. You can't, I used to call it a unicorn BRRRR 3 years ago before the pandemic, where because it was almost impossible to get all your money out unless you found like some incredible deal, and then all of a sudden it was happening everywhere, right?
Yeah.
And it happened. Now I think we're back to what's right. You know, you can buy a property. Let's say you put $100,000 into it, you get 100 or 150 on the upside on the refi. You could pull that money out, but you have to leave some of your deposit in, and that's a great return. It's a great rate of return, and if the interest rate does go back down, and even like, I don't think we're going to see a 1 or a 2 anytime soon, but even if it goes down to like 4, those properties are going to cash flow massively.
Oh yeah, they're going to be incredible. So going back to like, you know, that experience that you went through, and that was in London, right? For the majority of the part? Yeah. So what would you say today, having gone through that experience, what people should be, you know, how they should be planning properly?
Yeah, you know, I hate to say this, and I'm not going to write a book, but I could write a book on what to do wrong, because I think I did absolutely everything. I bought, you know, the cheapest properties in the worst neighborhoods you could find, right? So if anybody knows London, EOA, you know, sorry to the people that live there, but, you know, there's some rough patches in that area. I bought in the worst area of EOA. So east of Adelaide. And, you know, if you buy a house next to the crack house and you fix it up and you make it beautiful, your tenant profile isn't going to be very good, because people don't want to live on that street. And so it wasn't called a BRRRR back then. I had no idea what it was called. I was just doing it because it worked.
Same thing.
Yeah.
We were all doing that. We were all refinancing, doing whatever, but nobody called it a BRRRR back then.
It was a flip to yourself.
It was a self flip or whatever.
Or it was just smart real estate investing back then. I wish I had termed that acronym.
Yeah,
Jeez.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I was buying houses, I was putting money into them, I was getting nice units, and then I was renting them out. But, you know, I was renting them out to bad tenants, and so there was like 3 months, 6 months turnovers all the time, trash the place. So $1,000, $500, whether it was paint or carpet or flooring or whatever, all the time. And so it was just like a rolling, you know, I didn't have the proper property management, which I don't blame them, I blame me. Like, I wasn't prepared for it. They weren't specialized in that area. So that was a big part of it. You know, where I made the shift in, I'll say, the second phase of my investing journey was buying properties that I would have no problem, like the younger self living in those properties. So I went, you know, I primarily focused in St. Catharines, but there's a ton of areas that in Ontario that work. I was on the north side of St. Catharines in really nice neighborhoods, buying like, you know, beautiful old houses that had great structure, great bones, high and dry basements, but were cosmetically tired. So I was going in, cleaning them up, putting a basement suite in, making 2 beautiful units and renting them out to really nice tenants. And I've, you know, knock on wood, there's the odd thing that happens, but in general, you get areas like that, high quality tenants for years. And, you know, my biggest struggle right now is some of the people don't leave, and therefore, you know, after a period of 4 or 5 years, they're well under market value paying rent. But
especially over the last couple of years, like rents skyrocketed in the last, since the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
Like it's gone up, like I think it's 17% year over year in St. Catharines right now. So
yeah.
And I mean, when you look at that too, I mean, now let's take a look at those renovations for a second, right? I mean, the renovations that you're doing way back then, as the market shifts and the interest rates go up and the appraisals come in lower, right? Are there any specific renovations, like how would you advise investors to actually start looking at properties now to mitigate their costs or bring them down?
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. You don't have to over renovate. And a lot of times, like, I'll buy a bungalow, and what I look for now is an upper unit that's almost ready to go. So an upper unit, it could be slightly dated, but just needs, you know, some lipstick on it, some paint, maybe, you know, cleaning, you know, maybe a new bathroom or something like that. But you don't want to spend too much on that. You want to get it separated as soon as possible, and you put it on the marketplace. And that's what I've done for probably my last half dozen conversions. I've been able to, you know, under $10,000, get the upper unit ready to go, get a tenant into the unit, paying rent, which is, you know, anywhere from $1,850 to $2,100 a month that you have coming in. And then that way you can work on the basement while there's a tenant upstairs. So just make sure you warn the tenant and work with the tenant. There's going to be some construction there for the first 4 to 6 months. And then once they're on board, that helps mitigate a lot of costs. But you're right. When I first started doing this, even in phase 2 of my investing career, I was gutting the main floor as well.
Yeah, because you've gotten into some really aggressive projects, right? I mean, Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't need to. I mean, you want a good quality property for your tenants, but a kitchen that's 10 years old that's been cleaned or you paint the doors or whatever works very, very well. You don't have to give them the latest, greatest, brand new out of the box kitchen and flooring. You can just clean up what's there and then you rent to them, and it's some character in those.
Well, and the value is in the value add, right? Like it's in the change of use. It's from changing it from single family to two family, and that's where you're getting the real value.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
where that's your value add. And it's funny, like it's come up every show so far is that singles, right? Those are just solid singles.
Yeah, absolutely.
All day long. Like you're just walk up to the plate, you're in, you're out, your costs, everything. And it's just like, oh, boom, lace one to left field, get to first base, away you go, right?
Back in 2015, I think in the playoffs for any of the baseball fans that are out there, but this is what the Kansas City Royals did to the Toronto Blue Jays. They played small ball, they hit some oppo hits, they put them over the second baseman's head, and where'd they go? They went right to the World Series. I think, if I'm not mistaken, they might have won that year too. But
yeah, and it's not a guaranteed investment. Nothing is. You never know what can happen. But converting a bungalow properly to a duplex, it's pretty close. Like what the rents are. They're in good areas. There might be, it might be influx of rentals on the marketplace right now, so it's going to take you a month or 6 weeks longer to rent it out. But ultimately, if you have a good quality suite, you're going to rent it out and you can ride it out. The value of the property overall is sort of like a fictional number right now. I don't plan on selling any of these this year or next year or the year after that. These are great cash flowing properties, so you're just going to sit on them and wait for a period of time. The fact that the market did drop 30% is inconsequential to me, other than when I'm doing an appraisal on a refi, because I'm not selling the property. So I just need it to cash flow and work with a good mortgage broker to make sure you get your appraisal, and then just ride it out.
I know one.
Which you're working on a couple of mine right now.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so I know this is a podcast, but I want you all to go over to YouTube and check out Rob's furrowed brow. And do we need to powder that, or is Botox, or?
I want to know what we should do with this guy right here, because I spend a lot of time.
Maybe Cory's hot wife can comment on this, or maybe
some
Jen,
ideas.
or.
My issue would be like the Adam Sandler video. Is it Adam Sandler's movie where that guy, he laughs and all the water comes flying down his face? And my thing, because I laugh and I clench right here. Nothing would move.
Adam Sandler is the plastic surgeon in that one.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
There you go.
Let's hit that up in the comments below. Just be nice. Okay? Be very, very nice.
All right. So, I've advocated this since I've started speaking, is that I think single family conversion to duplex is the best way for people to start in real estate. I honestly think it's one of the most profitable ways to invest still, until you get to a point where it's tough to finance them because it's residential financing, and in Canada, the banks see if you own 10, 15 residential properties, you're a risk.
Agreed.
Where it's obviously the opposite. The more you own, the better you are. But whatever, that's their business, not ours, I guess. And so I always tell people, conversion, like bungalow conversions, that's where you should start.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to start anywhere, it's dollar for dollar the best investment you can do. Because now, bring in joint venture partners. Again, you're talking about 1,000 square feet. So I'm going to do 1,000 square foot basement, cookie cutter. I'm sure, what's your cost to renovate a basement now?
It's, a complete basement with no bathroom in it previously is probably around $100,000.
Right. If bathroom's there, it's 90.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So your worst case scenario is 100,000. If there's a kitchen already down there, it knocks down the cost a little bit, whatever it is, right? But for $100,000, 110, because you're going to renovate 10 upstairs, maybe some flooring, some whatever, and you got a great property, and you've changed the use.
Yeah, absolutely. And then now there's some opportunities along the same vein, but you can convert the garages into a third suite. So that's been a nice addition. I've now done a couple of those, or a few of those, and that's a nice, that adds to the value too.
All right. I didn't know this. Jeez, hot wife and garage conversions. All right, let's talk about this. So this is a hot thing.
Yeah.
Tell us about it. Like, what's...
Yeah, so I mean, you have to find the right municipality. Obviously, I was focused in, or I have been, and I am focused in the Niagara area. Welland was one of the first municipalities to allow this. So you could work with the city, and you could take a garage, whether it was attached or detached garage, and convert that into a third unit. Now you'd have to do it separately, so you'd have to permit the basement unit first. Once that was permitted and approved, you can then submit the permit for the garage and then work on that. So the first one I did was a attached garage, and it was a little studio suite. I put the bathroom sort of inside the house because the garage itself was only about 250 square feet. But I'm also about a block away from Niagara College, so it's perfect for a student to work that. And then the latest one I'm working on is a much bigger, I think the garage is like 700 square feet. And it's a double detached garage with its own driveway. I'm going to put a fence up, so it's like having your own house. And you know, we're about 3/4 of the way through. It looks beautiful. Like it'd be a great place for somebody to live.
That's commercial street. That's what I was getting at, a garage conversion on commercial.
Or is it going to be a commercial?
No,
unit?
the
It's gonna be residential.
the name of the road.
street is called commercial.
Oh,
Yeah.
I thought you
It's
were
a garage
talking about something
conversion.
else.
Yeah, and just to add to that, it's got its own separate driveway,
Yeah, it's got its own
which
separate
is super
driveway,
cool. Yeah.
and it backs onto a park. It's going to be like literally we're going to put up a fence, and it's like having a little 750 square foot house on its own lot.
Beauty. So, okay, studio. What'd that cost you to build?
So the studio that was attached to the garage was used as a bedroom prior, so
Okay.
it was a little bit more. It only cost me about 65,000. I didn't have to insulate. I didn't have to do a lot of that stuff. The garage that was detached was a little bit more because I had to run power, sewage, water, all that kind of stuff out there. That was more in the 140.
Okay,
Right.
that's actually really good. But so water and sewage and gas or whatever you had to run there, electrical. Now, did that come from the main house or did you run it straight from the street?
It came from the main house.
So you dug down in the basement. And
Yeah.
So you did that while you were doing the duplex conversion. Was that always the plan, or?
Yeah, exactly. So we were able to permit it up to a certain point or do enough work to a certain point. So as we were working on the basement, we dug the trench to the garage and then lined all that stuff up, and then had to stop at that point till we got our final occupancy permit for the basement.
Yeah.
And then once we got that, then we were good to go into the garage.
All right. So 140,000. Now, all right, I guess on the one that you put into the house is easy. Now it's a triplex.
Yeah.
Right? It's doesn't have a detached dwelling on there. It's just all in one house. It's legal triplex, right?
Yeah.
So refinancing, that's easy.
Yes.
The garage suite.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know just from previous experience that banks don't like separate dwellings. So maybe this is a question for Rob. What are people doing to get those garage suites? Because you put $140,000 cash in, right? What do you rent that for?
$1,750, $1,800.
Right.
That's
so
really good.
That's a really good return, but I'd still rather have that. I could do more with that 140 and get a better cash on cash, I guess. So I'd want to pull some of that money out. So what does that look like?
So basically now you're looking at, like, lenders are looking at that, and they're including those secondary dwelling units or those accessory dwelling units or garden suites, if you want to call them, as part of the financing process. Same thing, lease agreements in place, the appraisal happens on the property, and the lenders will take a look at it. It will be case-by-case basis. It's definitely going to be location dependent and the lender's appetite on it, but there's definitely financing options that are available.
Okay, because I mean, for me, it never made sense in the lower cost municipalities because I would rather just go buy another duplex
For that 140
for
down.
that 140 down and then refinance a bunch of that out and just keep going. And then once the land value got enough, maybe I would then go ahead and do it or something like that. Maybe I would set it up to be prepared for that, but I wouldn't actually go ahead and renovate that. But if you can actually, if the banks are actually financing that, like I remember we had 2 properties back to back on one lot and they didn't like it. Like,
Yeah.
there was only like 2 banks that would finance it, and back then they were giving you 4%, not 1%. So now
Yeah.
it's like 10 or 11.
And this is a natural transition in the landscape, right? As we continue to be, there continue not to be enough properties or enough availability for people to live, right? And I mean, I think the flexibility has to come in situations like that. And this is a strategy that a lot of investors, like your triplex conversion, I just recently completed one as well. However, my garage was attached. But this is offering more living to people. And I think, when you're looking at it, it's still really, really new, Mark, right?
Yeah.
Like that whole type of financing is still really, really new. What's that return going to look like over, let's say, 100 of them as they're done? Is it a 1-for-1 return? Is it a 0.5 to 1 return? I mean, we're going to see that as it continues to go on.
And I don't think I need a 1-to-1 return.
Yeah.
But I just need to have, for myself, just more security into what that looks like, right? Like, that's what I've been looking at. Like, I mean, it makes so much sense to do in Toronto.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
absolutely.
I mean, you do a 750 square foot detached double garage in Toronto, like, you're renting that out for $3,000,
Yeah.
right? And so, like, $140,000, I get $3,000. Crap, even if I don't get financing on it, I pay it back in 4 years, right? That's a great cash on cash return.
Oh, the cash on that is what? Like almost 25% roughly, right?
More, a little bit more than 25%.
Yeah, it's a little bit more, yeah.
And when I did buy this, like, and this is part of being prepared for a shift in the marketplace, like, I bought this pretty close to peak. I think I got the property at a really good deal, but it was during the peak. Like, I bought it. I had a 90-day close. So by the time I had purchased the property, taken possession of the property, market had shifted. So I was expecting on getting a lot more money out than I actually am.
Yeah.
I put 240 total into renovations. I might get 140 of that back out. When I was doing the design plan from purchase, I expected at least getting my renovation money out. I'm not. I'm okay with that. I'm leaving that money in. It's a great place to leave it. At the end of the day, I think it's $5,600 a month cash, like rent I'm pulling in from the property. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to cash flow like $600 to $800 depending on my expenses, and I'll hold that and wait for the interest rates to go down. And however long that is, I'm totally fine with.
Yeah.
Even if you take a look at that though, like even with all that capital that's in the project, I mean, you've been doing this a while.
Yeah.
Right. And as you continue to build out your portfolio, you get to that point where it's like, okay, you can even compete against other investors in a sense where it's like, even these numbers actually make sense for me. But what I'm really getting at here is that actually is equity that's within the property.
Absolutely.
Which allows you to sustain the type of market cycle like over time. And I think that's a really big takeaway when you look back at, how many years ago is that now, Mark? 2023 to 2008, 2009. Yeah, you're talking about like 14, 15 years ago. And that takeaway alone, I think, is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to be prepared. That was the one thing. Like I got into this, I'm actually glad it happened to me. Because I have the capital to sustain that and hold it. But you have to, whenever you get into a conversion, you have to be prepared that you might not get any cash back. Yeah. And then you can kind of comfortably go forward. I think a lot of people got caught in a trap where they were doing 4 or 6 conversions at once, thinking they were pulling all their money back out. And then when they didn't, now they're in trouble.
Yeah.
So.
Fair enough. All right. Well, I think we beat the bungalow horse to death here. I know you're doing some developments, like obviously that is development, but you're doing some bigger scale development as well. Tell us what you want about that.
Yeah, so I've got a couple of projects going on. The latest one I bought was, it's called the Rose Block Building. So it's right downtown in Welland. It's a 10,000 square foot, 3-story building. Used to be a photography studio. Okay. So it's basically, if you just think it's a big giant rectangle, beautiful old brick building, actually built in 1876. So it's great big vaulted ceilings, and we're going to basically gut that out and convert it into 14 residential units. And that really stemmed, if you go back to the peak of the marketplace, I know you were in the commercial side, so I'm not exactly sure how busy it was. On the residential side, you would see a nice bungalow. It would go on market on Friday. Mm-hmm. They'd be holding offers on Monday. I would go in the weekend, and there'd literally be a pile of business cards on the kitchen table.
And somehow your offer made it to the top of the pile.
I was able to get a few. But so I was really battling that, and it was clearly driving the prices crazy.
Yep.
There was no one looking at these types of buildings that I was looking at. So,
well, everyone thought everyone was like in the commercial space. I talked to a whole bunch of commercial agents back then. Everyone thought everyone was crazy, and we're like, even like in Hamilton, like there was a sub three caps were selling, right?
Yeah.
And it's people did put some stuff up at some ridiculous prices, never sold, but that was it. Like, and it's like, well, commercials all based on the numbers. The numbers don't state that, and I mean, some multifamily in Ontario because of rent control and stuff like that, you're paying for an opportunity cost to get that market rent at some point in the future. So you are overpaying today based on the cap rate or the return. But, even then, like people were like, I'm not I can't overpay that much. Like I'm not going to buy it at a 2 cap.
Yeah.
I mean, I bought something at a 2.6 cap, but we got it vacant over time.
Yeah,
Right.
and then we flipped it.
And then we flipped it
Yeah,
for a nice return.
yeah. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I appreciate you.
yeah.
Yeah, I was able to buy. I bought the first one I bought was on Church Street, right downtown St. Catharines, and it was twofold. What my thought process was with that. So it was an accountant's office, but it was an old Victorian home, and so it was 3 stories, and he didn't separate it. It was just an old home. They pulled out the kitchen and stuff, and he had rented out his office spaces to his employees, kind of thing. When the pandemic hit, everyone went to work from home. He had this building sitting there, so he put it on the market. It was on the market for probably 90, 95 days. He didn't get a single offer. So I was able to pick that up at a really good price and then work with the city, and we're going to convert that into a 4-plex. So that was the first one. The other main component of that, it's on a 255-foot deep lot right downtown St. Catharines. So we talked to the city, and they're all for further development in that area. So we're just working through that. The soil, it had a soil contamination problem, which took a year for us to figure out, identify, remediate it, get it all done. So we're all through that process right now. We're just waiting for our certificate, and then we can finish the main house. From that, we're going to refinance it, and then we can react to the back lot if and when we want to. It'll cash flow very nicely as a house up front, and we can develop the back when we want to. The Rose Block was a little different. It was a photography studio. We kept the tenants on for a few months. The previous owners stayed on as tenants for a few months. But they're now out, and we're just going to gut the building back down to basically the brick and the floor, and then rebuild these 14 suites into that. So,
Literally residential lofts, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of the design concept behind those.
Yeah, absolutely. They're going to be beautiful lofts. I mean, you have 14-foot ceilings on the top floor, and then I think it's 12-foot on the first and second floor.
So we can play basketball.
We can play basketball. We've got each individual unit has its own HVAC and hot water tank and all that kind of stuff. So minimum costs or minimum expenses, and they're going to be beautiful units. The windows are 8.5 feet by 3.5 feet, and there's windows. It's overlooking the canal downtown Welland.
Nice.
So they're going to be beautiful, beautiful lofts, and we're looking forward to breaking ground and getting that going.
Rough numbers on that. If you're
Yeah, absolutely. We purchased it at around 1.2,
Okay.
and our costs all in is probably, it's not finalized yet because there's a few different hurdles we got to go through, but you're looking at under 200 a square foot to finish it.
Okay.
And then we're going to go.
So you're looking at another $2 million.
Yeah.
So you're going to be in for say 3.2.
Yeah. Exactly, and then we're going to put it to the MLI Select, CMHC MLI Select.
Yeah,
energy efficiency.
Yeah, absolutely. The only and the main floor is all wheelchair accessible as well, which is very cool. The only thing we're not going to go after is the affordability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are you projecting for NOI on that? So for everybody who doesn't know, obviously with commercial financing, your value is based on your NOI, your net operating income, which is basically your expenses or your gross income, your rent minus your expenses.
So you're looking at, I mean, it's going to be about, based on today's rent rates, you're looking at about $20,500 for rents, and then
So about $250 a year.
Yeah, and then your expenses. At the end of the day, your cash flow is going to be about $7,000 a month.
That's your.
4,000.
That's after expenses, but that's after mortgage.
Yeah, I've done mortgage in there as well. So
what do you expect the refinance? What do you expect the value to be at the end?
So it's been appraised at 3.6.
What cap rate did they use on that?
I think they used 5.
5.25, 5.
Yeah, I think it was
somewhere around there. So one thing I want to add in here about the commercial financing aspect is that the building performance is very, very important. Obviously, like that's the majority of the lending that happens on commercial financing. However, it's also strength of borrower, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it is a complete myth that the borrower doesn't matter in these types of projects. That's not true. We'll just kibosh that one today. There is there are some very standard type procedures that you're going to use when it comes to the lender. You know, a couple of those things would be experience, what your net worth looks like, what past projects do you have, what does your portfolio look like today. Not just
what
jumping.
They don't care about is your T4 income.
Yeah, and they also don't play in a role with your TDS and your GDS, right?
Yeah.
It's not your ratios, right? So the performance of the building.
It is a DCR though.
It is a debt coverage ratio, yeah, the debt service coverage ratio. But the difference between the debt servicing of, let's say, on the residential side, where it's, you know, a total debt service ratio and gross debt service ratio, we don't have that in commercial financing.
And I say this all the time. That's why people should get into commercial once you've done enough of these smaller ones, is because the more money you borrow, the more they love you.
Yeah, and it's a natural
the lower
transition.
rate you get, the better deals you get, everything.
One of the things I was actually really surprised at was the lender's interest in the building itself. And you know, you underwrite residential properties or stuff. We actually had the lender out to the building to walk it with us.
100%.
And
all my lenders do that.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. It was fantastic to do it because, you know, we were able to show them our plans and our design concepts and everything, and take them up to, you know, to the rooftop patio kind of thing, and show him what we had envisioned. And he was like, "Yeah, I'm 100% on board with this."
Well, because they sign off
yeah,
on every deal, right? That's how that works. They sign off on every deal. I remember, we had CMHC. We had like some senior guy, because we did that 18 unit that I said on my first property ever. We bought an 18 unit vacant, first multifamily property, apartment building. We bought a vacant 18 unit, and we were going for the highest price per door in Hamilton. I think we were asking like 150 per door. Wow. And the numbers were sustaining it, right? And we were trying to get 150 door, and like some VP from Ottawa is like, "I'm going to be there. Or let's go through it at this time." And he walked through, and he's like, "You guys did a great job, blah blah blah, whatever." And now it's probably worth 250 or 300 a door now, but but that's the same thing, right? And they just want to put eyes on it, because if it's not standard as well, right? Like they just want to make sure.
I remember I literally brought him up to the roof, and we had to take a ladder to the roof at this point because there's literally a hatch. And we're on the roof, and he's like, "Okay, let's talk numbers right now." And I was like, "Here's the moment of truth. Like, here we go." And he's like, "What'd you buy this for? What are you putting into it? What are you getting out of it? What are your expenses?" He like grilled me for about 5 minutes, and then at the end I was like, "Okay, waiting for him. Like, is he gonna shove me off the edge, or
40,
or do
50
I have
feet
it?"
up.
And he's like, "Let's do this. We got a winner." And I was like, "All right, let's go."
Nice.
So,
all right. Well, I mean that's all cool and good and stuff, but I guess there's another aspect that we haven't talked about yet.
what aspect?
Where are we going with that?
Coaching.
Oh yeah. Okay, yeah,
So I like the pause.
I was like, is it his wife?
That's what I thought. We were answering.
Oh,
This is actually a really good
his hot
episode,
wife?
boys. Like, by the way, this is a really good episode.
His hot wife? What?
Yeah, his hot wife.
Yeah.
She's a good
We're
episode.
not gonna
What?
She is gonna love this. So
We're not going to go there.
Anyways.
Yeah, let's go to that. Let's go to that
right.
coaching thing. Yeah.
Let's talk coaching. So obviously you coach for an organization. Why, where, what, why, and how?
yeah, absolutely. So I'd been investing obviously for a long time, like 12, 14 years. And I was growing my business at a decent pace. Like I was pretty happy with it, but I knew there was lots I could learn. And it wasn't so much on like, you know, how to structure a bungalow conversion and finance it. It was more about scaling and how can I take my business to the next level. Did a lot of research. I, actually East Coast, West Coast, like found a bunch of coaches, talked to a bunch of people, and ended up joining Cory McKinnon's program.
Yep.
And I've been coaching or being coached under Cory for a few years now. Still am. I still coach under Cory. And then probably about a year and a half into my tenure with Cory, we started talking about me leaving my corporate position. And as part of that transition, I thought it would be great. I want to give back. We've talked earlier on the podcast about all the mistakes I made. I would love, my thing was I'd love to be able to help people not make those types of mistakes. And so, we kind of went through a training period of 3 to 6 months working with Cory and the other coaches. And then earlier this year, or I guess it would be last year now, started coaching my own students. So I've been doing that with Cory for a while. I love it. It's a passion. I have a number of students I work with on developing their goals and their strategies, and I get as much enjoyment out of it as they do, for sure.
Is there one tidbit that you could give? Because a lot of your students are pretty new investors.
Yep.
Right. So anything that you can share with the viewers and the listeners of maybe just a really high level piece of advice for them. Is it clarity? Is it picking?
Yeah, I mean, there's the two aspects to it in my mind. There's mindset and focus, and then there's like the nuts and bolts of how to invest and how to do that. I'll be honest, my strength's on the nuts and bolts. Like, I know my numbers, I run deal analysis, I know the cities, I know all that kind of stuff very well. It's the blend of the two that is challenging, and you have to work with the students on that. I think clarity and focus for the students. So this is information age, and there's so much out there, and you see so many great things happening. I get caught up in it too. You hear somebody like yourself speak at an event, and I'm wanting to buy multifamily apartment buildings in Edmonton. I absolutely do. But I also want to buy an Airbnb in Florida while I'm doing a rent to own in Sudbury. Like, you have to really decide on a strategy. And then once you decide on that strategy, know it inside and out. Know everything about it. Know the numbers. And it sounds like an after school special, but the more you know. If you know your area, and like I can tell you in the Niagara area, specifically St. Catharines or Welland, within a very short number, how much those properties go for, how much they're going to renovate for, how much I'm going to get in rents, and how much I'm going to refi them for. I know all of it. I can look at a property in like 5 minutes.
And you can be quick to act.
Yes, very quick to act.
Whereas you're brand new, maybe you're not quick to act, and somebody who's more experienced just comes in, puts on a napkin, says, here, yeah, okay, let's go.
Let's do it. Absolutely. Yeah. And same with if you have like, you're investing in Edmonton and you're investing in Sudbury and you're investing in like Niagara and Hamilton, you don't know those areas as well. And you can't be that good of an expert. I'm not saying only do one thing, but focus on what your strategy
especially
is.
at first.
And learn it very well.
Once you have a core competency, like you have a core competency in bungalows.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Like, bam, 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 all, okay, easy, right? Now, you can do that in your sleep. So it takes less time and energy over here, whereas now you're doing development.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
And you have less core competency, so it probably takes you a lot longer to be like putting the deals together and to getting the quotes and the plan and working with the city and all that type of stuff, right? And then it will become better core competency where you're doing whatever in the future, but until you build up that muscle,
100%.
It's like the gym, right? You go to the gym every day and build the same muscle, it's going to get massive.
And I think one of the things I would tell my students on, once you are leveling up and moving up is there's no shame in partnering with somebody. Like grab a hold of somebody that's done this before, that you're going to learn from, that can kind of walk you through that and partner with them. Yeah, you're not going to get 100% of the equity out or your piece, but you know what? To be able to learn that from somebody that's been down that path and is successful is like monumental.
Are you doing a lot of joint ventures still, Cory? I mean, I know you have some in your portfolio.
Yeah, absolutely. I've kind of built the large majority of my business on joint ventures, and that's in the bungalow to duplex to triplex area. I have a couple of people that are very, very interested in doing a joint venture this year. I also have one of the things I'm actually really kind of proud of is my joint venture partners. No one's done just one. Everyone's like, the first one you
give them back their money and they're like, I don't want that.
Yeah, let's go again.
No, it's like that check is poison or something. Take it back, buy another.
So for the most part, I have 2 to 4 properties with each of my joint venture partners, and a lot of them right now are in the market. Their houses are doing fine, but we're just going to wait a little bit till they can pull some more equity out, and then they want to buy another. I've had opportunities to do like a smaller piece of a larger project, and some people really like that, and some people like owning their own house. It's in their name. They know exactly what they're going to get, and they just keep going that way. So yeah, I don't see myself quitting on the joint venture aspect of it, more so in the duplex to, or bungalow to duplex to triplex.
Awesome, man.
Awesome. Well, any parting words for the podcast? And
also, do you want to tell people how they can get a hold of you?
So it's at Cory Froc Investments on Instagram. You can just DM me there and I'll get back to you really quick. You know what? Parting words, I want to thank both of you guys for what you're doing. Your advice over the years and your YouTube channel for the last number of years has been a big part of my journey. I've learned a ton from it. I actually thought about bringing in your book on rent to own to get you to sign it, but I forgot to bring it today. So
Maybe Mark, you'll have a copy for me.
A copy for you?
No, a copy for Cory that you can go home with today.
I actually don't. I don't own any of my books right now.
Okay.
I keep saying I should order some, but I don't have them.
It'll be an IOU.
I'm so bad with that.
I have the book at home. It's actually it's a great book. So I mean, I think it's a big thing what you guys do, adding value and adding some content out there, especially for the newer investor to learn and for the seasoned investor to keep growing. So thank you guys very much.
Our pleasure. And guys, thanks so much for listening to our third episode. If you haven't, and you're not watching this on YouTube, I do have a couple hundred videos that I have made over economics and real estate and stocks and basically what I'm up to in general. It's called the Mark Loeffler Experience. You can go check that out on YouTube, and definitely follow Rob and I on Instagram, and we'll see you all next time.